A good while back in my Clan Tremere video, I briefly mentioned Saulot, a video you should go watch, by the way. It briefly touches on Saulot. I mentioned the fact that Saulot would eventually get his own video because of how complicated this man is. And so I did. I went to go talk about Clan Diablerie first, his clan, and then I realized normally when I make a clan video, I talk about the antediluvian at least a bit as quickly as I can get it, and then I talk about the clan. Saulot needs an entire video. I cannot condense this man and everything going into it. There are two reasons for this that I can narrow down. The first reason, he's just complex because of everyone's favorite reason. Is it because he's written well? No, it's because of retcons, baby. It's because he's an old character that's existed for a long time, and as editions change, so is he. The other reason, Saulot is a character that encompasses some pretty hefty concepts in Vampire. I will get into what those concepts actually are, but these concepts have actually shifted as the game itself has changed over the long lifespan of Vampire the Masquerade. So as it's changed, he's had to change a bit with it, so he's altered, which has led to a perspective of Saulot being a guy that everyone perceives as the nice guy, like the coolest man ever, genuinely like, oh, just the perfect man. He isn't. I think it's very important to preface. I've said this in some videos that Saulot is just world's nicest boy. He's good compared to some of the other guys. You put him in a lineup with the other antediluvians, he's a fucking saint, I'll be honest. But other than that, I'll stop rambling. I'll get into his actual backstory. But I will preface for you vampire lore heads, I will apologize if I mess anything up. I'm gonna be covering some esoteric stuff and stuff that are sourced from some old vampire books, some of which I couldn't get my hands on for cheap, or just get my hands on in general. I don't have every single vampire book, sadly. They're hard to track down. So, if I get anything a little off in my interpretation or just a little incorrect, apologies, please bear with me.
Thank you to all my channel members for making these videos possible, and a special shout out to Christian Voorhees for subscribing at the highest level. This level of support truly helps the channel, so it is greatly appreciated.
But Saulot was one of the original antediluvians, as in he was created in the first city of Enoch, either sired by Enoch himself, like the guy who created the city, who was the second vampire in history from Cain, or Cain's like wife. One of those two. By all accounts, he was a pretty chill dude. He's pretty kind, pretty smart, a wise healer, who then went on to also embrace those who were kind healers. As well, he was a bit mystical. He really went into the supernatural elements, mainly because he was a little iffy on the whole concept of being a vampire. He was not a fan of it because there's a weird, dark element of becoming one of the kindred. This thing is known as the beast. Now, the beast is this dark predator element that now lives in your head. It's described in a couple ways. Mainly the most common way it's described as there's a now like demonic predator instinct that's living in your head. I don't believe it's a full actual demon in your head as in demon the fallen, but there's a predator instinct in your head that helps you survive. It is also pushing you to drink a little deeper, just go crazy, go frenzy, murder some people. It's the thing that makes vampires not human and makes you fall into inhumanity. It is the thing you manage in the actual game of Vampire the Masquerade. Through his mystical practices, using things like meditation and all of that, and as well, he also apparently had the gift of foresight and like, he could just tell the future. He got along really well with Malkav and Set, which you'll see a lot in older tellings. Those three, there's best buds. Which throughout all of this, he would then go on after the flood and moving on to the second city. He found himself a little upset again with this entire situation, and he decided to dip. He didn't want to deal with all this bullshit, especially after Cain left, and he went on to go reach enlightenment. His first stop, India, because to be honest, this point in history, right after the flood and you're in the Middle East, you're just like, where do you go for enlightenment? India, around the time they're developing Buddhism. And you know what? he did it. He actually did reach enlightenment. He came back with a third eye, like literal, on his forehead, a third eye, and reached a state he termed Golconda, named after the city he founded it in. Now, this is an important question and a very important concept when it comes to Saulot. What actually is Golconda? This is complicated and fuzzy because Vampire the Masquerade is a role-playing game. So the answer is kind of on the storyteller and the guy running it. It's intentionally vague. Mainly, what we can actually suss out that's not on the ownership of you making the game for your table is that Golconda is a state of vampire enlightenment where you reach a form of unity with you, the vampire, and your beast, where you live in harmony instead of trying to fight it constantly. Where instead now, you can basically achieve some form of humanity. There are some mechanical elements where this is shown, and Vampire 5th edition, this is kind of like Reaching Humanity 10, and older editions is done in different ways. There are a lot of different ways of achieving this, and this plays out primarily as well. This is not designed to be like an actual thing you can play, because this is meant to be like a campaign or character end goal. Your character will end when you get to this state, because vampires are not humans. You gave up or lost your humanity. You will stop feeling things. You can't feel warm anymore. Emotionally, you are turning numb. People are cattle now. The idea that you can now reach this state might seem lofty, and once you can do it, you can start feeling things like guilt. And in fact, other vampires will just straight up tell you, if you are feeling like any sort of remorse for, drinking humans, you need to actually stop thinking like that. For your own mental health, start thinking of humans like cattle.
What about them? What do I think of humans? I don't, really. When you were alive, did you think about cows? If one got killed, I bet you didn't cry, but, you're not out there slaughtering them for sport either. Man, we got our own problems. Let the kids sink or swim.
This has also changed over the editions. In the early editions of Vampire the Masquerade, this is actually really common. Like, this was a thing, there were actually like schools set up of Vampire Enlightenment where you can just like do this in like a good few years, or maybe like 100 years. Then as it's gone on, it's become way more difficult, which is what I was talking about when I said Saulot kind of changed over time, where currently as it stands, we have 5 vampire characters named that we know that have reached Golconda. But after achieving this, he would go and try to spread this idea further to his clan, who would really achieve it. They would strive for enlightenment, but never really work towards it to the method he enjoyed, and he would also spread it further, but over time would kind of start slipping into torpor, as many of the ancient vampires did, until eventually, as he wandered further and further, he would fall into complete disappearance around the time of the crucifixion of Christ. Which I gotta state here and now, I wanna mention, because I think it is a really good point, bring it up, there are a lot of similarities between Saulot and Jesus that I wanna talk about. So there are some very easy comparisons you can make just taking Saulot in as a whole. He is an empathetic Middle Eastern man who wanders around healing the sick and needy, guiding a large group of people to also teach about healing the sick and needy and teaching about a broader state of being and helping people. Also, as well, I'll get into it later, Saulot is very connected with the idea of Gehenna, the vampire end of the world, where he literally shows up as a messiah figure in almost every scenario of Gehenna, where he shows up as the savior in all of them, or limiting their effects. I think I could give some looser reasons of why there's some connections. There's literally a passage in the Book of Nod. There's an entry where he says, like, you are the white lamb, which is, the exact imagery and phrasing that is constantly used to refer to as Jesus. And there's also an entire element of praying for the forgiveness that is a direct scene that is very parallel to the Garden of Gethsemane. The agony in the garden scene from the Bible and Jesus. It's a direct parallel, and it's very similar. I was raised religious. I know this stuff very intently. So I'm analyzing this and I see the similarities. Now, obviously though, when I hear the fact that there's a character with very strong Jesus vibes, and then, oh man, he disappeared right at the time of the crucifixion, my brain immediately goes, wait a tick, is Saulot Jesus? No, he is not Jesus. Don't make the conspiracy theory. I almost did. I went on a small tangent in my notes where I spent an hour trying to construct, like, is this possible? No, there's so many reasons. Mainly the fact that Jesus actually does appear in World of Darkness. The Silent Striders werewolf tribe actually met Jesus, kinda. They found Jesus in the Middle East, like in Jerusalem, where they found out that he has he had a big AoE field where he directly affected the Umbra and would fuck up the spirit world, and he would fuck up the forces of the worm. He didn't know this, but the worm would directly be like fully repelled in Jesus' presence. So the werewolves would follow right at the edges of his presence and kill the forces of the worm in Jesus' AoE field, which is very smart hunting, gotta be real. But there's other little elements. If he was affecting the Umbra, Clan Cappadocian, who have the Oblivion and the other term for it, could immediately sense, wait a second, that guy's fucking with the astral plane, the underworld. Also, they're hyper-religious and psychotic. They would tell. They got super Christian, like super into Jesus around like this period in history, and they were in the same region. They would have known. Also, I feel like it'd be super obvious if Jesus was walking around with a third eye on his forehead. I think it's the key kicker at the end of all this. So no, Jesus is not Saulot, but they're very similar. Also, don't even get at me if like, oh, wait a second, he's a vampire. He would burn up in the sun. Dumbass, he's an antediluvian. He has fortitude 10. If you're at fortitude 10, you can just do whatever. You literally have a fortitude power that is a plot device. You can just do whatever the fuck you want. Fortitude 10, you can resist the sun. So he could have done it. That wasn't even part of the theory. This is a stupid theory anyway. So another pretty large part of Saulot's history is that moment in Tremere's history as well. The part where Tremere, like the man, diablerized Saulot for power. So there is a part of this where Saulot came back, because here's a fun fact about diablerie. If you're a really powerful vampire, sometimes diablerie doesn't work, because you're taking in a vampire's soul and it's staying in you, because sometimes they don't die. They're just sitting in there. And so there's two versions of this. I'll say into the first one. For centuries, Saulot, after being drank like a man Capri Sun, he fought for dominance over Tremere until in 1998, he took over Tremere's body and came back. Or alternatively, if you're listening to Goratrix, a man with the most evil name possible, I don't know how you can fucking trust this guy. Goratrix says that you can't trust him because he believes that Saulot immediately took over the second Saulot was finished being drank, and that every single thing that Tremere did to the Salubri, like fucking them over, declaring them as like diablerous in the state where now Salubri are at, of like being hunted down and murdered to like single digit clan member possibly, was done by Saulot pretending to be Tremere. What the fuck? The main point in all of this, in 1998, he was way more overt, and Saulot is currently back in Tremere's body, and Tremere, the antediluvian of Tremere, is gone. He was overwritten. So all of this to get into a main central point. Is Saulot a good guy? Like, is he a good fella? Well, I feel like it should already be a little stated. Not really. But in comparison, if you're like judging all the other antediluvians in a lineup, on like the list of the antediluvians, like the original, Clan Nosferatu's guy. Eey. Saulot is done a lot, I'll be real. Just a little list of dickings that I found. He actually has a history with Kuei Jin, because of course he does in his history of reaching enlightenment. He also went with Kuei Jin. He has a name that he went under, Saulot, which, what an alien. Couldn't tell it's you, man. He actually is known as Saulot the Traitor, because he went under one of their schools of enlightenment. He then learned everything they had, killed the master, stole all of the information, and left. He formed, most likely, a vampire clan known as the Bali, or more like a bloodline, to be honest. The Bali are a clan of demon-worshipping vampires who caused a lot of shit, like a lot of bad shit to happen, and he tried to clean up this mess, like he tried to. Their origin is also a little fucked up. He was fucking around, I'll be real. I don't know what he was on. He tried to clean this up. He was a little gung-ho about it. Hakim noted, like, damn, Saulot's really into the idea of killing all the Bali. He seemed a little into this. He never explained why, though. And then it's the fact of the Gehenna stuff. He is part of like most Gehenna possibilities. He is involved in most of them, at least limiting how bad they get or coming out to really just try and help. But I will state, his form of helping is do what I say, good overall. I will kill a lot of people, but it's the good, grand scale good. I rule because no one else can rule better than me. That kind of thing. The key thing about Saulot is he is good in comparison, because this is Vampire the Masquerade. Everyone's still vampires. They're all pieces of shit. Though, I will also say, on the other hand, Saulot is willing to do anything. He's going to sacrifice anything to make sure that the most possible people are saved and set up for the new world that he wishes to rule under his exact wishes. Like his own enlightenment. He will give up everything he's achieved, including his clan. You know, that's other human beings. Man, that's kind of fucked up. But all of his hard work, he will give up immediately to save the world, which I think is noble at the end of the day. So that's Saulot. A weird, complex man with a lot of shit going on and a lot of retcons going on and a lot of concepts to juggle. I think I hit everything, but if there's any other bits with Saulot that are sprinkled around in other books, let me know. I might have just missed it, because like I said, I don't have every vampire book, sadly. I'm trying to get my hands on them. So yeah, if you like this, like, comment, subscribe, do that stuff, join my membership, and see ya.